The first time I heard the voice, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a verdict. A metallic tone, smooth and hollow, slithered through every encrypted channel across Earth's defense grid. I was on night watch at Iron Dome Command, 100 meters beneath the Rockies, where the air always smelled of steel and old storms. The war room was silent except for the low hum of screens, everyone frozen as the alien envoy's voice seeped through like poison. "This is a formal notice to Planetary Governance Unit. Earth," it said, every word perfectly measured, without a trace of emotion. "You are in violation of Galactic Peace Protocol 7-5C. Unauthorized technological proliferation and weapons development beyond permitted thresholds. You have 72 hours to comply with immediate disarmament. Failure to comply will result in orbital enforcement." Orbital enforcement. That was their polished way of saying they would glass our cities until nothing but blackened soil remained. My jaw clenched as I scanned the silent faces around me. These were men and women who had spent years preparing for an invasion that most of Earth had laughed off as impossible. But hearing that voice cold, calculated, and condescending stripped away every illusion, they thought we'd kneel. They thought we'd beg. General Marcus Vega stood at the center of the room, hands behind his back, the sharp angles of his face lit by the glow of the monitors. Vega wasn't a man who rattled easily, but even he couldn't hide the grim set of his mouth as the Council's envoy continued. "Your species has been observed accelerating militarization. You are destabilizing regional sectors. You will submit or you will be corrected." President Eleanor Darnell arrived minutes later, her boots striking the steel floor like hammer blows. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself like a storm that could break cities. Her hair was tied back in a simple braid, and her expression was carved from granite. No panic, no hesitation, just fire. When her gaze swept over us, the room straightened like someone had pulled a wire. I stayed quiet, my hands curled around the edge of the console. 30 years in Earth defense, and I'd never seen the world so still. My thoughts went to my brother, Caleb, who spent his life down in the underground factories, machining parts for defense tunnels we prayed we'd never need. I could see his face covered in grease and sweat, working double shifts because he believed in something bigger. If we failed now, if we let the Council bully us into submission, all that work, all that sacrifice would mean nothing. The envoy's voice faded into static, but its weight lingered. The room felt like a pressure chamber, ready to burst. Darnell didn't sit, she didn't consult. She walked right up to the cum feed, her reflection sharp in the glass as she leaned toward the microphone. For a moment, no one breathed. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Tell your council we didn't crawl out of the dirt to kneel to cowards hiding behind stars," she said. "Prepare Phase 1, Ember." The order was given. There was no turning back now. The order to activate Phase 1 spread through Iron Dome Command like a shockwave. No alarms, no shouting, just the quiet, lethal efficiency of people who had trained for the moment they all hoped would never come. I stood at my console, fingers brushing over cold steel, watching as the hidden defense grid of Earth, a beast long shackled, began to stir. 12 silos, buried deep in mountains and deserts that the Council believed were abandoned, opened like silent predators baring their teeth. On the screens, I saw the launch codes flicker from red to green. Ember-class warheads, our deadliest and most secret creation, were waking up. They weren't nukes. Nukes were crude, a relic of another age. Ember was something worse. Smart strike payloads designed for surgical extinction. Not to scorch the Earth, but to rip the heart out of anything arrogant enough to threaten it. Vega stood near the central display, his dark eyes reflecting the glow of the launch indicators. "They think they're untouchable," he murmured. "They hide behind shields, behind their rules. They forgot what happens when you corner a species like us. I knew what he meant. Humanity didn't invent survival. We perfected it. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The entire room held its breath. My mind wasn't in the war room anymore. It was with Caleb, my younger brother, who would be down in the tunnel assembly line right now, bolting plates onto one of the heavy crawlers. He told me once, years ago, "Gabe, it's not just about defending Earth, it's about proving we belong." I wondered if he was listening to the same broadcast we were. I wondered if he was afraid. 3, 2, 1. Launch. The silo cameras came online, showing 12 streaks of fire piercing the night sky. They moved faster than anything visible to the naked eye, arcing, bending, cutting through the stratosphere like spears of fire aimed at invisible prey. The Council's cloaked carriers didn't even have time to react. The first detonation was silent on our screens but devastating in orbit. A flash of white against the black void, and a carrier the size of a city fractured into molten debris. The second followed seconds later. 6 carriers in total were obliterated before the Council even realized we could see them. In the sudden quiet that followed, every man and woman in the room stared at the screens as though they couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. We hadn't fired in defense. We had struck first. Status on retaliation? I asked. Nothing, the comm officer replied, voice shaking slightly. They're just gone. The envoy, who had spoken through every channel just hours ago, remained silent. For the first time, the mighty Galactic Council didn't have an answer. President Darnell's voice was calm as stone. Let them feel the silence. Let them understand Earth isn't prey. But deep in my gut, I felt it. The silence wasn't victory. It was the pause before the storm. Hours passed, and still no response. The planet below remained restless news. Networks scrambled, half the world terrified, the other half electrified by what they saw as our first strike for freedom. I watched the live feed streets filled with protests, people shouting into cameras, not knowing whether to cheer or pray. Vega approached me, his tone quiet but sharp. Knox, I've seen this pattern before. The quiet isn't hesitation. It's calculation. They're studying us now. They'll come back stronger. He was right. I'd seen that silence during the Eurasian conflicts, when both sides would stop firing, not because they were retreating, but because they were deciding how to hit harder. Any updates on fleet movement? I asked. Deep space scans indicate wormhole activation at the L2 point, said the sensor chief, her voice grim. Gate signatures heating up. Estimated time for breach, 36 hours. 36 hours. That was all we had to prepare for the largest invasion in human history. That night, as I left the war room, I called Caleb. The line was static heavy, the underground network barely holding together. Are we going to make it, Gabe? He asked, voice trembling. I didn't lie to him. I don't know. But I swear to you, if they come, I'll make sure they never forget us. Phase 2 was already being drafted. Drone fleets were mobilized. Orbital railguns, long kept in shadows, were being spun up. The old world powers, Russia, India, Brazil, even splinter nations in Africa, were connecting through encrypted channels. For the first time in decades, the world wasn't divided by borders. It was united by fear. We laid mines in orbit. Not the kind that just tore through hulls. These were dark energy mines, banned across half the galaxy because of their radiation signature. We didn't care about bans. We cared about sending a message. Earth isn't a planet, the defense minister said that night during a global emergency address. It's a graveyard waiting for guests. I stood with the other officers in the control room, watching the L2 gate shimmer like a bruise in the sky. Every instinct told me this was just the beginning. The first sign of the invasion wasn't the ships, it was the light. A ripple of violet and gold shimmered in the upper atmosphere, distorting the stars like they were being swallowed by water. Every scanner at Iron Dome went off at once. Sirens wailed through the war room, their shrill cries cutting through the thick silence we'd been drowning in for 36 hours. We all knew what it meant. The L2 wormhole was opening. Contact, Sector 4A, gate breach in progress. The sensor chief shouted, fingers flying over her console. Energy spike off the charts. This is it. I leaned forward, knuckles white against the table. I'd seen combat before, but nothing could have prepared me for the image on the screen. The Council fleet pouring through the gate like a flood of steel nightmares. One by one, ships of impossible design emerged discs, spires, and insectoid forms. Crawling with the eye parasites, each one bristling with weapons that could cut cities in half. There weren't a dozen, not even 50. The counter ticked up fast. 124 ships. They're not testing us, Vega muttered, his voice hard as iron. They're here to break us. President Darnell stood like a statue, her eyes locked on the foe. Projection of the incoming fleet. Are all Phase 2 defenses online? Yes, ma'am, the tech officer said. Orbital railguns primed, drone swarms active, mines deployed. Then we make them bleed. The words sent a ripple through the room. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was survival. The first salvo came fast Council skirmishers firing beams of cobalt energy toward our satellites. 2 come relays. Went dark before I even blinked. Then our minds triggered. The sky above Earth lit up like a second sun. Dark energy bursts ripping apart the first wave of Council cruisers. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. The void exploded with light, each ship shattering into shards of burning alloy. 8 confirmed kills. Someone yelled, "Railgun batteries engaging." From the mountain rings to deep-sea platforms, Earth's orbital railguns came to life. Hypervelocity slugs, each traveling at 30% of light speed, tore through alien shields like paper. Every impact was silent on our screens but devastating in Space Council ships folding in on themselves, their hulls splitting apart under kinetic force, but they weren't green. They adapted faster than I expected. The Council's vanguard broke into 3 divisions, flanking our defenses, targeting our most vulnerable points. Skirmisher drones moved like predators, weaving between our railgun fire to strike at our decoy satellites. Every time we swatted one down, 2 more slipped through. They're cutting through our network, shouted the comms officer. Primary defense grid is failing. Release the Nix protocol, Vega ordered. The room went silent for half a second. Nix wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was chaos wrapped in code. A virus built by the darkest corners of Earth's black labs, designed to confuse and corrupt anything with a digital brain. Once deployed, it didn't just hack systems. It drove them insane. Nix release in 3, 2, 1. The virus streamed into the Council's battle net like a phantom. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien ships started firing. On each other, shields dropped randomly. Drones crashed into their own carriers. On our screens, their formation collapsed into a storm of chaos. Friendly fire confirmed. Nix is working. The tech team cheered. I didn't cheer. I'd seen what Nix could do. It wasn't a clean weapon. It was messy, unpredictable, and cruel. But in war, you take what you can get. We launched Ember 2 platforms next. Hidden beneath oceans and volcanic crust, these launch systems had never been tested in combat. When their payloads cut through the black, wrapped in stealth plasma, the Council didn't even detect them until they were meters from impact. 12. More ships vanished in clouds of burning debris. For a moment, it felt like we could win. Then the Varanth arrived. The dreadnought appeared at the edge of the gate, larger than anything I'd ever seen. Its hull was alive with flowing metal patterns, like it was breathing. Its mass driver weapon rotated, glowing with energy that made every warning light on our screen scream. Target locked, the high-tech officer said, voice trembling. We didn't even have time to react. The Varanth fired. A single shot punched through our orbital ring like it was tissue, then plunged into Johannesburg. The city didn't burn. It evaporated. 5 million lives gone in a flash, replaced by a crater so large you could see it from orbit. The war room went dead silent. They just erased Johannesburg. Someone whispered, "Track that weapon," Vega barked. "Bring it down now." But the Varanth was already charging again. President Darnell's voice cut through the chaos, low and deadly. "Deploy Ember Prime." Everyone froze. Ember Prime wasn't designed to target ships. It was aimed at the gate itself. If we fired it, we'd collapse the wormhole, and anything still on the edge of that fold would be erased. It was our last card, and playing it meant escalation beyond anything we'd imagined. "Do it," she said. The Ember Prime launched. For a moment, time slowed. I watched the missile carve through the sky, its trail glowing like the tail of a vengeful comet. When it struck the gate, the explosion wasn't fire. It was a collapse, a ripple of energy that folded the wormhole in on itself. Every council ship near the gate was sucked in and torn apart, vanishing into nothingness. The surviving ships fled. Cowards. The war room erupted with noise, but I didn't celebrate. My hands were shaking, my breath ragged. We'd won for now. But I knew what was coming. This wasn't the end. It was the opening act of a war we weren't ready for. I closed my eyes and thought of Caleb, of the tunnels, of everything we stood to lose. The silence after the gate collapsed was worse than the battle itself. The war room at Iron Dome hummed with the soft mechanical whine of cooling systems and burned-out monitors, but the people were mute. No cheers, no victory cries. We'd just destroyed half the Council's fleet and shattered their wormhole gate, yet no one felt like celebrating. We all knew what this meant. We had just drawn blood from a predator. Predators never forget. From the observation deck, I could see the sky. Not the clear blue I grew up with, but a scarred dome of smoke and drifting debris. Burned-out fragments of council ships glinted like dying stars, orbiting Earth in silence. A defense satellite, still glowing from a direct hit, spun lazily out of orbit, disintegrating as it fell into the upper atmosphere. Below, Johannesburg was nothing but a crater. I couldn't stop thinking about the 5 million souls erased in a heartbeat. That image would haunt me forever. Major Knox. A voice snapped me back to reality. General Vega stood behind me, his face drawn and sharp. He looked like a man carved from stone that was beginning to crack. "We need your assessment." Phase 2 isn't over. "Sir, with respect," I said, my voice rough. "We've crippled them for now. But the council isn't done. You know it. I know it." His lips curled in something between a smile and a grimace. "They'll come back, and when they do, we won't just defend. We'll strike." We walked back into the war room where President Darnell was reviewing live intelligence. The holodisplays flickered with satellite feeds and intercepted bursts. One feed showed a council transmission we'd managed to decrypt snippets of alien voices, smooth and alien-speaking words. We barely understood. What mattered was the tone. Cold, calculating fury. "They're labeling us rogue," Darnell said, eyes fixed on the data stream. "Unfit for integration. They're preparing a containment protocol." "Containment," Vega repeated, his voice dripping with disgust. "That means occupation, mine scrubs. Drones in every city." "Slavery," I muttered. Darnell's eyes met mine. There was no fear in them, only fire. "Then we prepare for war on every front." No more waiting, no more hiding. She gave me a nod, and I knew what that meant. I'd been through enough Black Ops briefings to recognize the signs. Something big was coming. Something we weren't supposed to talk about. That night, I walked through the lower levels of Iron Dome, past the engineering bays where crews worked around the clock to repair the railgun batteries. Sparks flew as they welded new plating over burnt-out panels. Soldiers with bandaged arms hauled equipment without complaint, their faces pale but determined. I stopped for a moment, watching them. None of them were born for this war, but here. They were ordinary men and women standing against something far beyond human comprehension. My thoughts drifted to Caleb. I called him again, just to hear his voice. He answered from deep inside the tunnel factories, the clang of steel echoing behind him. "Are we winning, Gabe?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. How could I tell him that winning wasn't even the goal anymore? It was survival. Nothing more. "We're holding," I said finally. "That's all you need to know." The next 24 hours were chaos disguised as planning. Every global power that still had a functioning government linked up via encrypted channels. Russia, India, Brazil, Germany, nations that hadn't spoken in years were suddenly allies. Even the breakaway African blocs joined the war pact. For the first time in history, the entire planet moved as one. Phase 3 wasn't a defense plan. It was a trap. Vega revealed it in a briefing that made the room go silent. "We're building a kill box in orbit," he said. "They'll come back. Through another gate, maybe not L2, but somewhere close. We'll be ready with something they've never seen before." "Dark energy rigs?" I asked. His grin was wolfish. "Worse. Nyx wasn't our only ghost in the machine." I felt a chill run down my spine. 2 days later, we saw the first signs. The Council's probe sleek, needle-like machine slipped into orbit, scanning for weak points. We let them scan. We wanted them to see what we had prepared. An array of fake satellites, decoy weapons, and phantom comm signals. The real weapons, the Ember silos, the deep-sea launchers, and the orbital rail rings remained invisible. At 0300, I was on watch when the feed changed. The stars on the screen twisted and bent. A new wormhole was forming. This one wasn't violet and gold. It was black. A perfect void, eating the light around it. "They're coming," the sensor chief said, her voice cracking. I swallowed hard. "Bring everything online. Railguns to full charge. Drones in defensive grid. No one fires until I say so." The wormhole rippled, and then the fleet came through. Not 124 ships this time. 200. Every breath I took felt heavier. My heart slammed against my ribs as I watched their dreadnought ships, the size of cities forming a wall of death in the void. "Knox," Vega's voice snapped over comms. "If they break through this time, we don't just fight. We burn the gate again. And if that fails, then we take the fight to their home systems," he said. "Earth doesn't kneel. Not now, not ever." The first railgun volley screamed upward, a silent storm of metal fury. The void lit up as the Council ships fired back, their beams cutting across the black like blades of light. The war had begun again, and this time there would be no turning back. The war didn't end when the Council's fleet retreated. It just changed its shape. We'd shattered their second wave, collapsed another wormhole, and filled the void with the burning skeletons of alien dreadnoughts. But no one in Iron Dome believed that meant victory. You could feel it in the air, thick, electric, like the pause between lightning strikes. The Council wasn't going to waste more ships trying to break us head on. They were going to do something worse. It started with the silence. No broadcast, no demands. The alien envoy that once dripped arrogance into every channel was gone. Days passed, and the only noise came from Earth itself: panic, riots, blackouts. People who once believed we could stand against the stars began to doubt. You could see it in their eyes. What if they're already here? What if we're fighting shadows? The first reports came from New York. Entire neighborhoods went quiet overnight. No screaming, no chaos, just eerie calm. Civilians were found wandering the streets with blank faces, whispering the same phrase, unity through submission. The words alone made my blood run cold. It was the same ideology the Council had used to enslave a dozen species across the galaxy. By the time we sent recon teams, it was already too late. The nanites had spread Council-grade infiltration tech. We'd only seen in theory. These weren't machines you could shoot. They were silent parasites, swimming through bloodstreams and rewriting neural pathways, not just controlling thoughts. Replacing them, I was called to the deep bunker in West Nevada, where President Darnell and General Vega were waiting. On the table was a body, what was left of it. The skin was pale, almost translucent, with thin black veins spiderwebbing across it like cracks in porcelain. A glyph was burned into the chest, the mark of the Council. "What is this?" I asked, my throat dry. "Our first confirmed host," Vega said. His tone was detached, but his jaw was tight. "They're here, Knox. They found another way." "In?" I stared at the body. She couldn't have been older than 30. Someone's daughter. Someone's mother, maybe. And now she was just gone. Not dead, but erased. "They're infecting us," I said. "Worse," Darnell replied. Her voice steady. "They're convincing us." We called it Operation Iron Veil. Every city on the planet went into lockdown. Communications were cut. Networks were purged. We burned our own satellites rather than risk them being hijacked. Earth went dark, crawling back into the Stone Age just to survive. The people weren't happy. Some believed we were the monsters. Now tearing apart the world in the name of survival. That's when he appeared. Rev.ik. The Council's voice, but with a human face. He hacked every major broadcast channel, his image flickering across screens worldwide. Tall, calm, dressed in simple black. His eyes flat and black as oil looked through every camera as if he could see each of us. "People of Earth," he said, voice soft but carrying like a whisper through bone. "Your leaders have brought you suffering. You've lost millions. You've lost your sky. The Council offers you peace. No more war, no more hunger. All we ask is that you surrender your weapons and join us in unity." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a demand. It was an offer. And that made it worse. Because people listened. I watched from the war room as riots broke out in Chicago, Lagos, Bangkok. Protesters weren't asking for victory anymore. They were asking for surrender. Revik had planted a seed of doubt, and it was growing fast. "What's our move?" I asked Vega. His response was grim. "We cut it out at the root. We find where they're broadcasting from and burn it down." Easier said than done. The accord the name Revik's followers took had networks buried so deep in our systems we couldn't tell friend from foe. They weren't all mind-controlled. Some were just people who believed his lies. People who wanted peace at any cost. It all came to a head 2 weeks after the second wormhole battle. I was in the southern command bunker when the walls shook like. The earth itself was screaming. Dust rained from the ceiling. Sirens blared. Impact in Sector 6. A voice shouted over comms, "We've been breached." The screens lit up with red. A Council skimmer, sleek, black, and fast, had slipped through our defenses. Someone on the inside had fed them our coordinates. Then the world went white. When I woke up, the mountain above West Nevada was gone. President Darnell was gone. Half. Our command staff was gone. The Council hadn't sent ships this time. They had sent a message. I crawled out of the rubble with blood in my teeth and rage in my bones. Vega survived, burned and bruised, but alive. He gripped my shoulder, his voice low and hoarse. Knox, they're not just fighting us in space. They're rotting us from the inside. And if we don't stop them now, Earth is finished. That's when we made the decision. No more waiting for them to come. No more playing defense. If the Council wanted to rewrite humanity, we'd burn their machines before they touched us. Get me a strike team, I said. We'd take this fight to their core. Delvia, Vega said. I looked at him sharply. Their psychic hub? He nodded. We destroy their mind. We destroy their grip on every species they control. I didn't hesitate. I knew what this meant. It wasn't a mission. It was suicide. But it was the only way forward. Fine, I said. When do we leave? The next day, the operation was named Harrow. I didn't know then how much blood it would cost. I didn't know how many of us wouldn't come back. All I knew was this: the Council thought they could infect us, manipulate us, break us from the inside. They were about to learn what happens when you push Earth too far. The ship we took to Delvia wasn't built for glory. It was a coffin-black steel, no signals, no AI, no digital trace that the Council could hack. Analog all the way down to the circuits. We called it Spectre 3 because that's what we needed to be. Ghosts sliding into the heart of the enemy. There were 6 of us on board. No names, no ranks, just call signs burned into our helmets. We weren't coming back. Everyone knew it. The ride was quiet, too quiet. Space travel has a way of making you feel like you're falling forever, even when you're standing still. The silence crawled into your head, chewing on your thoughts like rust eating steel. I'd been on suicide missions before, but this one felt different, heavier, like we weren't just carrying weapons, we were carrying Earth's last shred of defiance. Delvia appeared on the viewport after 7 days of drifting and stealth. It wasn't a planet the way we understood planets. It looked alive, wrapped in metallic vines that pulsed with blue light like the neural threads of some colossal brain. Towers of crystal and alloy jutted from the surface, each one flickering with data streams we couldn't comprehend. The entire place felt wrong, like it wasn't meant to be seen by human eyes. God, whispered Silas, our weapons expert, and my oldest friend. That's not a world. That's a nervous system. He wasn't wrong. Delvia was the Council's mind-it psychic relay hub. Every ship, every drone, every thought of its collective empire passed through those towers. Destroying it would be like lobotomizing a god. We dropped in through the lower atmosphere using kinetic pods. No thrusters, just freefall and heat shields. The pods burned red-hot as we pierced the strange violet haze of Delvia's sky. I hit. Ground hard, the impact rattling my bones through the armor. The landing zone was quiet, too quiet. Team check-in, I said, pulling my rifle into ready position. Ghost 2 alive, Silas grunted. Ghost 3 clear, came Raina's voice. Steady as always. Ghost 4, Ghost 5. On your 6, the twins answered. Kale, our comms man, was the last to speak. Ghost 6, I'm good. No signals picked up yet. Their perimeter's asleep. It wouldn't stay that way. The relay spine loomed ahead, the largest tower of them. All spiraling upward into the clouds like a shard of alien bone. We moved fast, cutting across terrain that felt more like flesh than soil. Every step sank slightly, and the ground pulsed with faint vibrations. Like we were walking across the surface of a giant creature's skin dot. By the time we reached the outer walls, the silence had turned suffocating. There were no guards, no drones. No defenses, just the soft hum of the structure itself, as if it was breathing. This is wrong, Raina muttered. They know we're here. Then we move faster, I said, clocks ticking. Inside the relay spine, everything changed. The walls were smooth and seamless, shimmering like liquid metal. As we moved deeper, lights began to flicker across the surface's images. Memories, maybe thoughts stolen from 1,000 species. I caught glimpses of human faces among them, soldiers, civilians, some of them screaming, some of them smiling. It made my skin crawl. Then we found the Guardians. They weren't drones. They weren't even fully alive. Twisted humanoid shapes, their bodies half organic and half machined, like the Council had built soldiers out of the corpses of the conquered. Their eyes glowed white as they approached, moving silently, weapons growing out of their arms like blades. Contact. Silas shouted. The first Guardian lunged, and I put 3 rounds through its chest. It didn't scream, it just collapsed, twitching like a puppet with its strings cut. We tore through them fast, cutting a path with EMP grenades and silenced rifles. By the time the last one fell, our armor was smeared with strange, dark fluid that wasn't blood but smelled like burned metal. At the core chamber, I understood why Vega had called this mission suicide. The engine floated above the floor, a spinning sphere of light and sound that bent the air around it. Streams of raw cognition thoughts, data, memories poured into it from every direction. The walls flashed with 1,000 voices at once, and for a moment I swore I could hear my brother's voice whispering my name. Silas pulled out the pulse core, weapon the size of a basketball but powerful enough to erase every networked mind within a 20-kilometer radius. Once armed, we'd have 10 minutes to escape. If we failed, the blast would fry our nervous systems like circuits. Ready? Silas asked. I nodded. Do it. He placed the core on the floor, its surface glowing faintly. That's when the shot rang out. Silas collapsed, blood spilling from the side of his neck. I spun around to see Kalarkum's man standing there with his rifle raised, expression unnervingly calm. Stand down, Knox, he said, voice steady. The Council isn't our enemy. They're our evolution. What the hell are you talking about? I barked, my heart hammering. They showed me the truth, he said. A galaxy without war, without pain. We can be better. We don't have to die here. Better? I snarled, leveling my rifle. You call this better? You can't. Fight them, Gabe. You can't fight perfection. I shot first. Cale dropped without a sound. My chest felt heavy. He wasn't a traitor from birth. The Council had reached inside his head and twisted him until he believed their lies. I grabbed Silas's tag, his blood still warm on my hands. We finish this, I said through clenched teeth. I scanned Silas's DNA to arm the pulse core. 10 minutes, that's all we had. The walls around us began to open, rows of Guardians emerging like shadows, their faces blank and staring. Tell your Council, I growled into the silence. This is what happens when you touch Earth. Then I hit the final sequence. We ran. Bullets, plasma, screaming alarms, the entire structure came alive as we tore through its veins. I felt the heat of the pulse core building behind us, a hum so deep it rattled my teeth. By the time I dove through the exit hatch, the countdown hit 0. The explosion wasn't fire. It was silence. A psychic scream that ripped through every channel in my mind and left nothing but white noise. When I woke up, I was half dead. My left leg was gone, replaced with a steel prosthetic. My face was burned, my voice raw from screaming. But I was alive. Silas wasn't. Delvia was gone. We'd killed their mind. And in doing so, we'd lit the galaxy on fire. The galaxy didn't celebrate the fall of Delvia. It screamed. The Council's hive mind had been the invisible chain binding hundreds of species, hundreds of systems, and with a single pulse we had shattered it. Fleets went rogue. Colonies revolted. Worlds burned, not just from our warheads, but from the chaos that followed. Earth hadn't just struck back. We had torn apart the order that had ruled the stars for centuries. In the weeks after Delvia, I saw things that didn't feel real. Alien fleets that had once moved with machine precision now scattered like frightened animals. Communications across the galaxy dissolved into static, and into that static, Earth spoke. We were no longer a voice begging for survival. We were the voice of fire. Earth is no longer prey, General Vega declared over every open channel we could hijack. We are the warning the galaxy forgot to fear. People listened. Too many people. The first time I saw Karen-3, I knew Earth was changing. The planet was a rock, a dusty trade hub orbiting a dying star, its surface blasted by acid storms and glass deserts. We claimed it because no one else wanted it. Within weeks, Earth's flag flew on every ridge, and thousands of alien refugees gathered at our gates. They didn't come because they loved us. They came because they feared the Council and believed Earth would protect them. Arrived at Karen-3 as part of the first diplomatic team, though we all knew what that really meant. Occupation with a smile. The outpost was swarming with soldiers, tech crews, and smugglers trying to make a quick fortune off the chaos. I walked through the gates and felt the weight of 100 alien eyes watching me, hoping I'd be the savior they'd imagined. One of the locals, a hunched reptilian named Kether, approached me. His skin was cracked like old stone, and his twin mouths spoke in perfect unison. "Will you lead us?" he asked, voice rough but reverent. When Earth strikes, the galaxy listens. The words hit me harder than I expected. We weren't just defending anymore. We were becoming something else, a symbol. A hammer that everyone wanted to hide behind. But symbols are dangerous. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. I saw Earth soldiers barking orders at refugees like they were slaves. I saw alien tools confiscated without cause, civilians pushed aside in the name of order. It was small at first, little abuses, easy to excuse, but it grew. Within a month, the outpost felt less like a refuge and more like a colony under Earth's heel. When I confronted Vega, his response was cold. Order is messy at first. The galaxy needs us to lead. We can't afford to look weak. That's the same thing the Council used to say, I shot back. His silence said more than any argument could. Then Revik returned. The broadcast came without warning. Every screen in the outpost flickered to life, and there he was. Clean, calm, with that same oily black stare. "Look at what Earth has become," he said, his voice quiet but cutting. "You fought tyranny only to wear its crown. You burned Delvia, shattered our minds, and now you build cages of your own." The outpost erupted into whispers. Aliens nodded. Some humans too, because deep down they could see it. We'd won the war, but we were starting to look like the enemy we fought. The order that broke me came 2 weeks later. Operation Severance. I still have the datapad burned into my memory. Effective immediately, cleanse sectors 3 through 9. All unauthorized alien settlements are to be dismantled. Resistance will be met with force, not evacuate, not relocate, cleanse. I stormed into the command bunker, slamming the pad onto the table. Commander Strain, a fresh-faced officer who'd probably never fired a rifle outside a simulation, barely looked up. "You want to explain this?" I growled. "It's protocol," he said flatly. "It's genocide. It's efficiency." He replied, unblinking. I didn't hit him. God knows I wanted to. Instead, I walked out. That was the moment I knew Earth had lost its way. I couldn't let it stand. That night, I gathered men and women who still had fire in their hearts, veterans of the first wave. People who remembered what we'd fought for, not power, not dominance, but survival and freedom. We called ourselves Ashfall because that's what we were. The last embers of the Earth that had risen from fire. Our first move was to intercept one of the Severance Convoy's Earth troops headed to wipe out a refugee camp. We hit them hard, disabling their crawlers with MP blasts. I called out over comms, my voice sharp. "This is Major Gabriel Knox. Stand down. You're targeting civilians." The reply came from Colonel Ree, a man I'd fought beside during the orbital sieges. "You've gone soft, Gabe," he sneered. Then he ordered his men to open fire. I hesitated. For 1 second, I hesitated. And in that second, one of my men Red took around to the chest. He didn't scream. He just looked at me like he didn't understand why I'd waited. That hesitation burned away the last of my doubt. "Fire," I ordered. The fight was brutal and short. When it ended, 3 of my own were dead. The convoy was destroyed. And I was officially an enemy of the very flag I'd sworn to protect. The weeks that followed were war in the shadows. HFY sabotaged Earth's operations on Karen 3, exposing labor camps and sterilization clinics they'd set up under the guise of integration centers. We broadcast the truth. Some humans joined us. Most just called us traitors. The worst. Blow came from someone I thought I'd lost forever. Silas, or what was left of him. He came for us in the middle of the night, tearing through our outpost like a storm. His body was the same, but his eyes, empty, cold. EarthGov had rebuilt him from the corpse I'd carried out of Delvia. They called him Wraith now. When I saw him, I froze. Silas? He tilted his head like a machine studying prey. "You should have died with honor, Gabe. Now you'll be erased." We barely survived that night. Wraith slaughtered half my unit before I forced him back with an EMP charge. Watching him walk away still alive, still there's hurt worse than any wound I'd taken. I knew then what I had to do. This wasn't just about fighting the Council anymore. It was about saving Earth from itself. I returned to Earth, slipping through the debris fields and the watchful satellites. I infiltrated Iron Dome, the place where this war had begun, and found Vega waiting for me. "You've turned against your own," he said, his voice calm but cold. "No," I said. "I'm fighting for the Earth we used to be." For a moment, I thought I'd have to kill him. Instead, he surprised me. He handed me a data chip, coordinates, he said. "The Council's last stronghold, Nexum, finished this war before. It finishes us." Nexum was worse than Delvia. A black planet, pulsing with strange blue veins, as if the ground itself was alive. Wraith was with me, Silas, broken but not gone. I could see flickers of the man he used to be every time I spoke his name. Together, we descended into Nexum's core. It wasn't a fortress. It was a heart. A pulsating, breathing engine of thought. The last remnant of the Council's mind. "You are no different," the voice said in my head as we planted the charges. "You seek control. You will become us." "Maybe," I whispered. "But not today." Silas smiled, just a flicker, but enough. He ran into the heart of the core, detonating the charges manually. I screamed his name, but he didn't look back. The explosion ripped through Nexum, collapsing the mind of the Council once and for all. Made it out barely alive. Burned, broken, alone. Ashfall is scattered now. Earth is rising as something I no longer recognize, and the galaxy watches us with a mixture of fear and hope. But I know one thing, we didn't fight to become kings. We fought to stay human. And if I have to burn every lie we've built to remind them of that, I will.